Welcome back to another monthly market update. I'm Ryan Deeter with Key Realty, and we are diving into the March of 2025 numbers. We're into April, which means we're in the middle of the spring market, in the middle of the peak market here in Columbus. If you've been following these videos for very long, you know that there's the cycles of Columbus, and the spring is the time when most of the appreciation happens and when the peak of the market hits really in May. So we're kind of at the beginning to middle of the spring market. We're going to dive into the numbers from the past month, and help us predict the future of the next month to few months beyond. We see patterns happen every year. So if you're wanting to know, hey, what can I expect in May and June and July, stay tuned. We're going to dive into that. But also just kind of see, what I'm seeing is the market seems to have leveled out. I think we're at the market where we saw a little bit of change last year. We're seeing things be a little more consistent this year, and I think we're going to see some numbers that show that. So let's dive in and stay tuned as we dive into all that information. Thanks for joining us. And again, before we dive into all that, if you haven't subscribed to this page or liked it, please do. It helps me know who's watching, helps me know that those videos are helpful to you, and lets other people find it as well. So thanks for tuning in. Let's do it. All right, here are the March 2025 numbers the Board of Realtors puts out for us, fresh off the press. So you can see here, this is for all these counties involved. Again, I kind of, a little redundant on this if you watch these videos. But just a reminder, this is for the Columbus region. If you're looking at your individual area where you live or your neighborhood, please reach out. Be happy to dive into those numbers with you. And we're going to dive a little bit into the nuance of that. But I'll just start with this. As we get into a little bit more normalized market out of the COVID era, we're into the more normalized, quote unquote normal market, which is always changing, but what we're seeing is the fundamentals coming back to be really important right now. And the fundamentals of location, condition, and timing, that's market timing, are vital right now. And I think they're going to continue to be throughout the history of the market. They've always been, but I feel like during COVID, you kind of got away from those fundamentals a little bit, where it just was, hey, you have a house, you have 3% interest, let's make it happen. Obviously those were a little bit of a factor, but people were just selling things left and right. You have to understand that condition really matters more than ever right now, as prices are up still, interest rates are up, so things cost more. So in general, then, if you have a kitchen that's redone versus one that's not, that kitchen, to redo the kitchen may only cost $50K, but the homeowner or the potential buyer doesn't have $50K left over after buying a house, down payment, all that fun stuff when it comes to the purchase cost, and then have $50K to rehab it. But they will spend maybe $100K more on a nice house that has a nice kitchen where they don't have to touch anything on it, because they can finance it. Even though it's 7%, they can still finance that. It's a lot cheaper up front. Now, obviously, it costs more down the road to finance it, but people don't have the cash to buy, to remodel things right now as much as they did, and especially when cash was cheap at 3%. It made it a lot easier for people just to buy something and not worry about the condition quite as much. So with that said, just a little note, if you're looking to sell in this market, you really got to focus on condition. We are seeing things as we're in spring market right now. I always like just to bring an update of what's going on in the spring market. We are in the spring market, and that means that if you have a house that is in the right condition and it's ready to go, it is flying off the shelf if it's priced well. Doesn't have, if as long as you don't way overprice it, it is flying off the shelf with multiple offers. That said, if you have a house that needs a lot of work, that's priced a little high for the work that needs done, it is sitting and it's taking longer to sell, if it sells at all. So that's kind of a snapshot of what's going on right now as we sit in April. And I'm just going to scoot on down to this chart, because this is my favorite chart that just kind of quickly says what's the Columbus market is. And you can see here, if we zoom in, this is the market. We see things spike up in the spring as we have the last 10 plus years. This goes back 10 years, but if we went back even further, you would see these same patterns till 2008, which had a little disruption then too. But as we zoom in here, you can see we are a couple months in. This data is, only 3 months of the year. You can see that it has shot up. We hit bottom in January, and now we are going. And this means that we hit bottom in January. Those are things that are listed in December, sold in January. That's the bottom of the market. Now we're seeing things spike up. So if you listed in January, you're seeing it close in February. If you listed in February, you're seeing it close in March, and vice versa. You're going to see that continue to climb until we hit really May market. Into May, we see things slow down every year. You can draw a line right in the middle. You can see the peak happens really early May. And so we are only a couple weeks, really a month in, left of the spring market here. So if you're looking to sell, this is the time to really push it and get things done so you can sell it and get things, ready to go. If you're looking to buy, you got to know it's going to be competitive out there. It's going to be multiple offers on a good house that if a house that doesn't need a ton of work is probably going to be very competitive. But there's options out there for, again, like I said earlier, if you're willing to do some work, willing to take time, you have some extra cash, you can do the work, then there's options out there. You can actually find some opportunities in this market. As you're seeing, things aren't quite as, as a whole in Columbus as a whole, we're not seeing things, just a crazy appreciation. We're just seeing that year over year patterns continue to happen. So even though we're only seeing just under 4% average price increase, we're seeing under that when it comes to median just over 3%, and then about 5% price per square foot. So we are seeing this means that we're seeing a higher number of smaller homes sell for larger amounts, keeping these numbers down but keeping the price per square foot up. So which is not surprising, as we see, just smaller homes selling for more as well. So that's kind of the snapshot of the market right now, just kind of seeing things modestly grow year over year. We've seen this 2 years in a row. I think last year, last year's number pulled up here. Yeah, last year's numbers. We saw a little bit further growth last year in that 8%. Is this all? Yeah, this is all. So we're seeing, even at more modest, this is, 24. Yeah, so we're seeing even more modest than we did last year. But if you hit January or June, we saw a really strong spring market. But when we get to, let's go to June, see if I can find June. Yeah, June of 24, you can see that things really slowed down, and it really slowed down here. And we actually ended up pretty modest by the end of the year. Let's see if I actually have that. If not, let's find it. Let's go back to the end of the year. Bear with me a second as I, let's find out what we ended the year on in 24. So if we go to, where's December? There it is. Year over year. Oops. Entire MLS. We ended the year around, so the second half of the year was very slow last year. And a couple things happened there. We had, interest rates, rumors of interest rates coming down. So this is last year's end of year right here. We had rumors of interest rates coming down. We had an election year, we were about, really election year was ramping up where all the, talk was going on. And so people were kind of just hesitant to make a change. People thought interest rates were going to come down. So buyers that anticipated prices being cheaper weren't, and prices continued to come up. So not only do we have price increases, we had interest rates staying higher, we had an election year. So, people were just less likely to do something. The end of the year, we actually saw those, those numbers come down. You can see, let's just go back here. And you can see this last year, you can see we had a kind of a crazy ride here. You can see this dip happen. Then you had this, around November, we had this little peak. People thought the election was over. Take a deep breath. Let's actually make plans, move on. The world didn't end. We can actually buy a house. And then all of a sudden you say, okay, wait, nothing major changed after a presidential election. Surprise, surprise. And, then you had some turmoil in the markets and stuff. So anyway, so we had things come down, and then now we're seeing that spring market just pick back up. Tried and true spring market there. So a couple things just to think about as we think about the future or the next few months is going to hold. We have, we're going to start seeing less homes sell. We're going to see the market continue to, I think we're kind of at that range where, the Columbus market is going to be pretty consistent here, where we're seeing around 2,000 homes sell a year or a month, sorry. Depending on the month. And we see last month we're just over that. But what did we get in January? Yeah, so we bottomed out in January at 1,500, which is like one of the lowest we've seen since, I think, in 10 years, the number of homes selling. There's a multitude of reasons why. I don't want to dive into it today, but I think we're in that point where we're going to see a kind of modest, slower sales, a little bit uptick in the amount of, this is 24. So here we go. So we saw, there. So we see a little uptick in inventory. I think this is the thing I want to talk about. The inventory is kind of here. I think we're seeing this 1.6. It was 1.2 last year, and it jumped up to 1.6 over the summer. Really over last year, we saw homes just not selling as fast and as often. But I think we're kind of here. We're kind of floating at this 1.6 all year long. We've been almost 12 months now in that range as last spring kind of ended. I think that's kind of where we're going to be. We're not going to see a ton of new listings outpace the amount of sales. So, what I would say is what the market we're seeing in this spring and really this winter is going to kind of be what I think the normal market in the next few years, where we're going to see opportunity if you have a good house that everybody wants, and you're going to see an opportunity as a buyer if you're finding opportunity to value add, to do work, to rehab, if you have extra cash to do that, or find a way to add value to it. And so that's kind of what I would say is we're not going to see anything drastically change. My prediction, I do think we're going to see the next month be very competitive in all of Columbus. For the most part, some areas are going to be more than others. We're going to see the Columbus city not be quite as competitive as it used to be, as we're seeing pockets slow down. Happy to talk to you about what pockets those are if you're interested. But we're also seeing pockets of Columbus and especially some of the suburbs really continue to just be strong, perform strong. But we saw some suburbs actually slow down. So it's kind of, there's a little bit of give and take here, where we're seeing some markets take off. And you can see here that you can see if you're looking to buy or sell the region. So let's see here. I gotta March here. There's March. You can see they break it down based on areas, which is a really cool thing. A lot of MLSs do not do this in other regions. So this is a really unique thing that the Columbus region has that is just super helpful if you're looking for a certain area and understanding this. But what I would tell you is that there's, it's more, this is the data, it's overview data, and you got to know the data, but you also got to know what's going on. You got to know the market. You got to know what a house has. Sometimes there's just a house that has everything in it that's going to fly off the shelf. And sometimes there's just a house that, hey, this is not the house that most buyers want, and it's going to sit and not sell. You got to understand the market and understand dynamics of that. And Columbus can be street to street. So there's some streets that are, very dynamic and some streets that aren't. And, understanding the nuance of Columbus market is important. And happy to always be an advisor on that if you're interested. But if you're looking at a certain area, this is a great tool that you can have to kind of understand what's going on in your area. Okay, lastly, I want to hit on interest rates. Of course, that's always one of the big drivers of the market is where interest rates are going. There's been a lot of chaos the last month with the tariff talks and tariffs itself going on, just really disrupting the markets. And you can see, we hit the peak here last year, or last year, I guess, would be here. We hit the peak in the high sevens, mid sevens. In December of this last year, January of this year, we're at 7.25 essentially. And right now we got up to a little over 7, but we're dipping just below 7 right now. So you see this spike here has happened during the tariffs, and then now we're kind of just, what they're saying is no news is good news at this point. You're kind of letting, things kind of level out a little bit. Banks and lenders do not like chaos. They like the predictability. And so there's been a lot of chaos in the market. And the bond market has really took a hit too. And the mortgage rates are really directly tied to the bond market. So if you want to dive into that and nerd out a little bit, happy to talk to you about that. But I don't want to dive into it in this video. But if you see headlines saying the bond market's dropping, probably means interest rates are going to go up. So that's the first thing that I look at is, okay, what's the bond market doing to understand what the interest rates are going to do. So just a little helpful tip there. Again, if you are interested in learning more about the Columbus market in any way, happy to have the conversation with you, happy to jump on a call or even meet over coffee. Just reach out. Happy to make that happen. Hope you have a good day. Don't forget to like and subscribe this and so other people can see it. Thanks for tuning in.